Alright guys, so you voted for me to talk about Nero. She's currently on rate up over on the NA version of the game. She's on rate up with a lot of the other Roman guys because, well, we have a Roman Grail live. So we're going to talk about her in today's video. And whoops, not that Nero. But yeah, we're going to talk about her in today's video. And I wanted to do more of a discussion video for her because I feel like everybody knows that Nero's not the best servant ever. She's like kind of decent, but she's decent in the way that like Saber Lily is decent, if that kind of makes sense, where you can use her for some niche corner cases, but it's really going to be specifically for just like wave clearing if you don't have a better box. Now, funny enough, when Castoria did come out, I tried to force Nero to actually be able to farm, and we kind of got it to work with the mix of like farming against casters, a maximum broken K-scope, but you know, we were able to get her across the finish line. But I didn't want to give her like a super insane dedicated video. Instead, I kind of wanted to do something where it's like, yeah, we'll talk about what Nero does that's really good, but what should she be able to get in the future that can make her better, right? So more of like one of those types of videos that I've done for like Gilgamesh, for instance, where it's like, did Gilgamesh fall off? Is there anything that they could do to kind of help him out? You know, some of these, I just have to do more discussionary type videos just for some of these servants, right? It's just kind of a spur of the moment thing. I'm a little bit of a sporadic guy, you know, I got to keep you guys on your toes. But if you enjoy daily FGO content, make sure you leave a like on the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for that sweet daily content. And you should also peep those links down in the description down below, primarily that Twitch link that's down there, because I stream every weekday at about 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Although I did miss, I believe it was yesterday, because I was feeling very, very under the weather. Like I literally slept for like 12 hours. I was feeling so sick, but I beat it. I'm absolutely fine. I hope I'm fine. You know, I'm just walking around tomorrow and I just like get my existence decoupled or something as I'm just walking around. It's like, turns out bro was not fine. But anyway, with all that being said, let's go ahead and just start talking about Nero. So one of the main things that I think you need to kind of understand when you're like kind of questioning why Nero is not really used all that much, it's this, all right? She has an AoE arts NP that only has one hit on it. Now, if it was a single target NP, it wouldn't matter as much. You would still feel the effects of her not being able to loop, but it's something like that. If you're an art servant, you want to be able to at least kind of be able to use them. I mean, even though Caskill's NP gain is kind of nerfed on his NP because of how many hits are on there, you can still kind of force him along because of how many hits he just straight up has. But Nero having one is like so crippling for her, right? I talked about this in the tier list when we were talking about someone like Da Vinci, who has an insane kit, but just fundamentally, it's going to be really hard for her to do a lot of refunding, because this is going to be one of the main ways that your art servants are going to get their NP back, as they're going to try to refund as much as possible so they can spam NPs. I mean, that's like Arts 101. Spam NPs, refund off the NP, it stongs, right? So like, even though there's like the fact that like her NP is not particularly great, I mean, it's kind of barren here. We got 20% defense down for one turn on the enemy, doesn't even proc first, and we're piercing defense, which is kind of nice, but something like Pierce Evasion or Pierce Invincibility even would probably be a little bit more useful, because while there are bosses that give themselves defensive buffs, I mean, hey, if you're playing Lost Belt 7 right now, they're all over the place, right? People that give themselves random defensive buffs, but they're usually like not super insane. It's usually like 20% here, 30% there. Nothing super insane that you kind of can't just power through, whereas an invincibility can stop you for an entire turn. Like a dodge can stop you for a turn, or maybe it's something like really annoying, like say William tells like 20 dodges that are all like chance based, or the Talalak fight where she gives herself, I believe it's Talalak, who gives herself like 3 hits of invincibility every single turn and it like regenerates, right? If you could just pierce that and kind of just bypass it, it's way more useful than bypassing defense. Still useful, but again, when we're already kind of like reaching for things on the NP, it's not super great. So for one, I think if we could just give her a NP overhaul, I mean, we're going to have to kind of make her more catered to challenge quests. Thankfully, her kit's already kind of geared in that direction. You're kind of not going to be using her for farming anyway, because she's pretty good. And well, I say good, but like she can be good if they kind of reformat what she's doing in those harder quests because of, you know, like the triple guts that she's got going. So if we want to reformat this, right, and either like A, take it the farming route where we just give her like straight up Artoria refund on her own NP. If you're not aware, most of the Artoria servants give themselves NP back whenever they fire their own NP. We could do something like that for Nero, and it could kind of turn her to like a Zenobia type servant, where instead of just having like big fat batteries and insane natural NP gain, if you use like the Zenobia, know what I'm talking about, she'll usually get about like 80% of her NP, but because of her like refunding ability, the NP over time that she gets, she'll just give herself like whatever she's missing at the very end of the turn. And even at like NP1 can technically farm as long as she's actually able to take the enemies out at NP1, she's able to do enough damage. But we could give her something like that, right? Where whenever she fires her NP, maybe Nero gives herself like 20 to 30% NP back, and maybe that way you could probably brute force your way through it, especially because I imagine a lot of people would have like higher NP copies of Nero because she's such like an old servant. Although I say that, but when I made my original Emiya video, I was like, everybody's got Emiya at high copies, right? He's such an old servant, and like all of the comments were like, dog, I still don't have Emiya. But it could be one of those really nice things that maybe you have it scale with like NP level. Maybe, well, I don't think overcharge would be very good because kind of counterproductive for like being able to farm and stuff. But I think if you want to like slap that on there, and maybe if you want to be a little bit quirky, you could do something like she gives herself buff success rate for the Imperial privilege that she has on her second skill. You could maybe be a little bit quirky like that and be like, oh, once you fire the NP, you can get a guaranteed Imperial privilege, which you might say, well, that's going to have her wave 1 look really weak, but they're kind of doing that with a lot of servants nowadays. Like that is getting like more and more common. Like, and I think one of the best examples of someone like Arcoweed, right? Where Arcoweed's like first NP really doesn't hit all that hard because she's trying to set up her passive. She has to set up like the field so she gets like those massive card buffs that then she starts to do really, really strong damage. So it wouldn't be like completely out of pocket if they wanted to do something like that. But yeah, if they're not going to buff the hits, which I know they've said they wanted to do, but maybe it's like a programming thing. Maybe they can't just like tick this up to like 4 or something. Then something along those lines could actually help her be a farming servant, or they could go around like the route of being able to give her stuff like Pierce Invincibility, or maybe she's like lowering enemy arts resistance, right? Stuff like that. If they're like, oh, we want her to be kind of like an AoE boss killing servant, which I know everybody's kind of tired of already because we've gotten like 800 billion of those guys. We haven't seen like a single target servant in like forever, but this is a pass servant, right? Giving them a buff. Some of the other like things that are nice about Nero, because like I think these are the only 2 skills that people really care too much about, because the guts is super insane. Like a 5-turn guts that's like got 3 activations on it, really insane. Who cares that it even procs at like 600? It means like Nero's kind of like a baby Heracles, right? Like she's really good at keeping herself alive, especially because she's got like a decent heal. She's got good defense and attack if you can get these to proc. And so it can make her more of like a survival servant. It's kind of why I think they would lean more into that. And I think if they're not going to fix the hits, that's probably the way to go, rather than just trying to like force every servant into being a farming servant, right? Which is one of those things that I think is another discussion that probably could be had in the community, that like not every AoE servant needs to be a farmer. It's like one of the issues that I have with everybody having a huge critique of like, say, Summer Abigail, right? Where they're like, oh, she struggles with farming. It's like, well, maybe they just really intended for her to be a boss killing servant with how much she's able to do debuffs on, because her debuff damage is really good, but you can only use it for 1 node, right? For instance. And I think Nero could be like another example of that, or where it's like, well, maybe she just doesn't have to be a farming servant. Yeah, they done goofed and gave an art servant AoE NP 1 hits, but maybe we can try to turn that into a bit of a positive, right? And we could have her be like a boss killing servant, right? I think this was kind of a good step in the right direction, because just a 30% battery in general is just generically good. I think this was kind of a misstep. She probably should have, especially because it's so low. It's only 20% arts. This probably should have just been a free buff, right? Like that should have just been something she was given for free. And then if she was on water side, she got like an additional 30% or something. Then that would have been kind of crazy, because then she could potentially have like an arts mana burst, but only in specific places. But at least it's water side and city. So like those are fairly common. This is also, by the way, another good point for her being like a survival, like boss killing servant, if they want to take her that route. Because I think like having the 100% debuff resistance on top of her passive magic resistance, really good. That's 150% resistance, so like you can whiff a lot of these annoying debuffs, right? That could be really, really strong. And I don't know, I think that's probably the route that I would like to see them go, instead of like trying to force her into a niche, right? Because you've got the groundwork here for a strong boss killing servant, right? Someone that's able to kind of get around buffs that bosses can do, maybe tick that up to 3 turns, so every time she fires her NP, she's starting to stack damage against them, but with debuffs, right? Which is typically something you want to do against bosses as opposed to farming. You do that, maybe slap on like an arts thing, or like a Pierce Invincibility as well on there. And I think she'll absolutely be cooking. Or they could just be like, nope, she gives herself 30% NP on her own NP. We're going to give her like fat arts buffs, and we're just going to like shove 5 more batteries into her. You know, the third skill is going to give her 20% NP every single turn. And it's going to be one of those servants where you just like force them to farm. They could just do that, right? I don't think they should, because I think a lot of these skills that just aren't good for farming, right? Like that's not like, you're not going to use it for farming. Like, these two things are only relevant in like actual like difficult content. Same thing for something like this. You know, I think that could be like a really good step in the right direction and kind of give Nero her own identity, right? And kind of like let her be viable, because I absolutely love Nero, right? It's no surprise to anybody that ever like pops in the Discord has like seen me on stream or anything. Like, Nero's one of like my favorite like female servants in Fate. Like, I think she's an absolute banger, right? If you've played like Fate Extella or Fate Extra, you know she's just like the most adorable little gremlin. So I absolutely love Nero. I like that she has good versions like Nero Bride and Caster Nero, but let's not forget about the OG Nero that also has all of the costumes, right? Like, let's, you know, I like that she's getting costumes, but let's maybe buff her up a little bit as well, so like I can actually take advantage of using the costumes and it's not cope. But I don't know, let me know what you would do for Nero in the comments down below. How would you fix this servant? And I guess the question would be as well, would you want them to try to like force and make her a farming servant, or would you like to see them try and give her more of that like boss killing survivability saber niche, right? I think something like that could be really, really cool. Let me know all that and more in the comments down below. And obviously, if you're like wondering, should you summon for Nero? Like, no, I don't think you should go specifically for Nero unless she's one of your favorite characters, which I can relate to, right? Like, I can relate if you summon on the banner specifically for Nero, because yeah, I know, dude. I know she's great. But yeah, let me know all that in the comments down below. I'll go ahead and get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day. Peace. Late, guys.